Hey everyone, welcome back to our next lesson for the 21-day family reset. We're jumping into week 3. And so in the third week of our program, of our 3-week program, we're really looking at kind of where the rubber meets the road. We're going to start putting some of the concepts into action and structuring some planning around the family meal so that you are empowered to really make the changes and make them stick. So for today's lesson, we're really going to talk about one particular part of it that is so vital, so important to really creating a lasting change, a legacy of change for your family, your kids in particular. And that topic is the family meal. So now, traditionally or typically in our culture, the family meal happens at dinner time, the family dinner. And honestly, that's because schedule-wise, that's the most common time that all the family members are at the home at the same time. Work is done typically, school is done typically, so we can all gather for the family meal. So we're going to start at the basics, depending on where you're at and where you fall into the spectrum. We'll talk about ways to improve, to advance, and to add life and joy to your family meal. So for those of you that really don't do a family meal, that don't have a regular time, at least weekly, that you all sit down together, the entire family, both parents, all the kids, that's really the first place to start. When people start looking at lifestyle habits, nutrition habits, and so forth, and really study and research the family meal, we find that it makes a huge difference in so many areas. In particular, one study or one set of studies looked at risky behaviors for teenagers, and they found not even just eating behaviors, but things like the likelihood of trying drugs or drinking alcohol at a young age or other risky behaviors significantly decreased relative to the amount of times and regularity of the family meal. We found that risks of obesity and obesity-related diseases like type 2 diabetes significantly go down if there's a regular family meal. And so it makes a huge difference. And that's just in the statistics, In terms of your own satisfaction in the family experience, the family meal is very valuable for that too. If you think about it, in our modern day where often both parents are working, kids are at schools or daycares or wherever they are during the day, we all have so many different experiences separate from each other. And so the opportunity to come together and share those experiences, or at the very least just share common space together, is a valuable thing in terms of our own digestion of our day. And then also it often leads to healthier habits and choices in terms of nutrition and eating. So first and foremost, if you aren't regularly doing the family meal, start doing it. And look at your schedule, and maybe in your family, the family meal is breakfast or lunch even. It really depends on the schedule. But start looking at it. And if you think like, oh, we can never do that, that's too hard with our schedules, sit down with your schedules, put them all together, and find a place. Be creative and find a space where it'll work for your family. Now, if you're a family who does do the family meal on some regularity, whether it's every night or a couple times a week, whatever the case may be, we can also look to up the level of that and its impact and on the health of the family and the kids and the enjoyment of that. So a couple things to look at, and one is I would highly recommend that the family meal be considered to be a time where there's no screens of any kind. So no phones, no tablets, no computers, and no TV screens while you're having the family meal. If those things are involved, we know that it doesn't have the same effect as a regular family meal. So, and another study looked at when screens are involved in eating, people eat on average 25% more calories than they would when screens aren't involved. And that kind of makes sense, if you go back to some of our earlier lessons about presence and being present, that if you're interacting with the screen, you're not as present to what's going on in your body. And when we think about how health comes from inside and how a big part of our goal in this whole process to really give to our kids and to ourselves is the ability to listen more deeply and more closely to that message inside, it makes total sense that if we're not present in present time consciousness, if we are looking at a screen, that we wouldn't hear those signals the same, and we would just maybe keep consuming is what they found, up to 25%, or on average 25% more. So that's a big one. So you want to set the parameters of what the family meal means. And number one, no screens. And then it's looking at what the other parameters are. Is there a time frame? Is everyone expected to be there for 30 minutes or 40 or 45 minutes, whether they finish their meal or not? And that's a really good one too, to set expectations in advance, and really set a time expectation. And not that it's going to be like hard and fast or a punishing thing, but in my household, I have 3 kids, and they eat at different speeds. Often my oldest will eat much faster than the other 2, the younger 2. But we encourage her, and we have an expectation essentially that we're all going to sit together for about 30 minutes from when we start, even if she's done eating in 10 minutes, which happens sometimes. That way it's not related just to how fast you can eat your food and get back to, your cell phone or whatever the case may be. It's really about having that experience together and setting the parameters. So a couple things. If you're someone or a family that does family meals sometimes, I would recommend looking to up that level, up that number. If you do it on average 3 times a week, up it to 4 or 5 different times a week, if possible. And if you're starting from scratch, if you don't do that at all, then really look to make it happen. And some of the very basic keys are all sitting at a table together, so not in a car, not in a vehicle. Now it's summertime coming up, or depending on when you're watching this in the season, so outside of course is fine as well. But so you're all in a common space, and you don't have other distractions, other screens, and so forth. And then you have a set expectation of at least a time frame that you're going to be together, and then what the roles are afterwards. Do the kids run off and the parents are left with cleanup? Does everybody clear the plates? All that kind of stuff. So there's flexibility certainly in the homework from this lesson, how you're going to up the level of your family meal, whether it's just starting to do it, whether it's doing it more often. I would recommend for everyone, no matter where you are on that spectrum, to really institute the no screen policy, and to really at least set a plan in advance of what the expectations are in terms of time and interactivity. And another big one that I want to leave you with is do your best as parents to leave stress out of the family meal. So stress can be a big part of some parents' experience with food and eating with their kids, because they struggle with having their kids eat healthy, fighting over kids not liking the food, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to get into creating a plan in one of the next lessons, and we'll dive into this a little deeper. But just starting with this exercise of the family meal, consider how you can plan your response in advance of being at the meal, so that it doesn't have to be a struggle or a fight. In our house, and this is something awesome that I learned from one of my great podcast episodes with the 2 women from Parenting Power, they had a little phrase that we instituted in my house. It's been wonderful. And that is, we as parents decide when and what, and then the kids decide if and how much. So what that means is we decide when the family meal is happening, so 6 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock, whatever the case may be, and we decide what. So we make a variety of things that are the meal. And then when the kids are enter into the picture, they decide how much of each thing they're going to eat, and if they're going to eat each of the things. So it's not like we load up their plate with a bunch of stuff that they may or may not like and say you have to sit there and eat it till you're done, or any of that. It empowers them, it empowers us, and it sets clear boundaries, so it creates much less difficulty and struggle. And the kids have loved it so far. And really their eating habits are equally good as they were, but they have the experience of having more of a say in the matter, and not just being told what to do. All right, so family meal, homework is start doing it. If you're doing it, do it more. And for wherever you are on that spectrum, up the level of it. So no screens, be present, set expectations in advance. And if you want, try the we as parents decide when and how much, or when and what, and the kids decide how much and if. All right, you guys take care. We'll see you on the next lesson. This is Dr. Brad signing off.